The nervous system is made up of the brain and spinal column. For us to understand how trauma impacts a child's nervous system, we have to explore the brain. Infants and toddlers' brains grow at an astonishing rate. Over 1 million neural connections are made every second. Connections are created when a child interacts with an adult or peer, their environment, and the experiences around them. When children continue to experience positive interactions, these neural connections survive. On the other hand, toxic stress and trauma can cause neurons to wither and die prematurely in certain key parts of the brain. Consequently, the more trauma a child experiences, the fewer neural connections are made. This is critical because a child's future health, learning, and behaviors are determined through these connections. Professor, please tell us more about the brain.
We are learning more and more about brain development every day. As we know, a young child's brain develops rapidly in the early years. By the age of 5, the brain is 90% the size of an adult's brain. There are 4 major regions of the brain, each with a specific role. The left region of the brain is very orderly. It is logical, literal, linguistic, and linear. The left brain loves that all 4 of these words begin with the letter L. The right side of the brain is nonverbal. It focuses on sending and receiving messages such as facial expressions, hand movements, body language, and eye contact. The right side of the brain is known for emotions, personal memories, and creating images. The left and right regions are opposites. They balance each other out. When a young child begins to ask why, they're engaging the left side of their brain. This simple skill shows that a child is starting to think about cause and effect, as well as wanting to express their thoughts verbally. The goal is for children to use both sides of their brain so that they learn to value logic and emotions. This will lead to being able to understand oneself and the larger community. The brain forms from the bottom up. The brain stem develops first and takes care of bodily functions that happen without conscious awareness, breathing, for example. The brain stem is our first line of defense that helps us deal with trauma or emergencies when we don't have the luxury of time to think about it. The brain stem is directly connected to the retina. When we see something, even before we are consciously aware of it, the retina transmits to the brain stem and our fight, flight, or freeze response is activated. The limbic system is the second portion of the brain that forms and holds the amygdala, which is the brain's fear center. When the amygdala is repeatedly triggered by chronic or toxic stress, it becomes overactive. The limbic system also plays a role in forming new memories. When the amygdala gets activated, it sends a signal to the hippocampus that disrupts the brain's ability to create both short-term and long-term memories. The limbic system also governs emotions, motivation, and behavior. It's easy to see why trauma impacts children's emotional responses, behavior, motivation to engage, and memory. The upper region, or prefrontal cortex, is one of the last parts of the brain to develop. In fact, it is believed that this region is not fully developed until most individuals are in their mid to late 20s. The prefrontal cortex is where decision-making, problem-solving, working memory, mental flexibility, and planning take place. This part of the brain helps children regulate their emotions, process information, and think about others. For children experiencing toxic stress, the activities of the prefrontal cortex are inhibited when the amygdala sends signals of alert. The idea is to decrease brain functioning so that reasoning doesn't override survival. This affects children in different ways. Some show impulsive behavior and aggression, and others withdraw, have trouble concentrating, and solving problems. Just as the left and right sides of the brain work together, the same is true for the lower and upper regions of the brain. When the upper and the lower regions are functioning together, the upper brain is able to assess the actions of the lower brain. This monitoring helps to calm strong emotions, responses, and impulses. The monitoring goes the other direction too, so that, when decisions are made, we consider the emotional concerns and physical implications. When an individual's brain is integrated, or when the orderly left brain and emotional right brain coordinate, and the sophisticated upper brain and primitive lower brain communicate, they are able to make better decisions, regulate the body and emotions, interact with peers, and experience success in school. The interconnection of neural circuits found in the areas of the brain, including the prefrontal cortex, limbic system, amygdala, hippocampus, hypothalamus, and brainstem, affect the development of emotion and cognition. This is because the circuits that are involved in the regulation of emotions are greatly linked with those that are associated with executive function. Executive function refers to cognitive skills that include planning, focusing attention, controlling impulses, remembering details, and decision-making. These executive function skills are closely related to the development of problem-solving later in life. In terms of basic brain functioning, emotions support executive function when they are regulated, but interfere with attention and decision-making when they are poorly controlled. When the separate regions of the brain work together and share information in a continuous manner, the brain can function at its best. The challenge is that infants and toddlers don't have fully developed brains. They rely on the right side of their brain and the lower region of their brain, the emotional and impulsive regions. The developing brain can be greatly impacted by the experiences a responsive caregiver offers. An infant or toddler whose family and caregivers talk with them about their experiences and their emotions develops a resilient, well-integrated brain. When the stress response system is activated, the brain releases cortisol, a stress hormone that instructs the body to increase its heart rate and respiration. This reaction causes a person to either freeze or flee. The terms fight, flight, or freeze refer to reactions that result in a person fighting, running from, or freezing in response to a perceived threat. These can trigger much more quickly in the brain of a young child with a history of trauma, even when there is no real danger in sight. Examples of fight include crying and acting out in anger, such as kicking or hitting. Examples of flight include restlessness and shallow breathing. And examples of freeze include holding of breath and decreased or increased heart rate. The nervous system responds to cortisol by releasing other hormones that help bring the body back to a restful state. This release and response system works together to help maintain a stable emotional state.